republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Here.
Here.
Here. Why? Here. All present except Paul Wynn. First item on the agenda is a public hearing for the 2012 tax rates. Is there anyone here to speak on the public hearing for the 2012 tax rates? They remain unchanged from last year. Hearing none, that closes the public hearing on tax rates. Next is a public hearing on the amendment to the 2020 master plan. Is there anyone to speak to the amendment to the 2020 master plan?
Good evening, members of the County Council. A.C. Dinoff, county resident. This master plan, unfortunately, was not on the county's website and available for the general public to look over and read, to come to testify in a format either for or against. The county council staff was kind enough to get me a copy, and there's one item in here that I read. It talks about wineries in our tourist district and the areas in Augusta and the southwestern portion of the county. However, we've been talking, meeting after meeting comes up the cell phone issue. We keep talking about redoing the cell phone legislation and the cell phone ordinance, but yet nowhere in this report is cell phones mentioned. And I think that is a key element to the progress of the tourism and the winery district, to make sure, because in 5 years or 10 years, those are going to be obsolete commodity of using cell phone towers, and we as residents in the county are going to be stuck with those eyesores. So as Councilman Brazel has been pushing for an ordinance that has thickness and meat to it, I'd like to see that be part of this agriculture, tourism, land use plan. I think it's imperative. These cell phone towers make millions of dollars off of the rental and lease from the tenants, such as the U.S. Cellular, AT&T, and the other companies alike. And so they need to be responsible and a good community partner with the landscape and the aesthetics to protect property owners in these districts that we're talking about. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Anthony, I would like to ask, is that true that the public was not made aware of the master plan amendment?
What you are receiving tonight is the report from the Master Plan Steering Committee. The normal practice for the council when you get a report from the Master Plan Steering Committee is to have a public hearing. And so that's what this is tonight. Next month, you will have an ordinance that will be on your agenda, which basically sets places an ordinance on the agenda to pass this plan amendment. And there'd be 2 readings. But this is the public hearing on what the Master Plan Steering Committee has sent to you. And I could give you a very quick overview of that plan, if you desire.
We have it, but for the people at home, maybe you could give a quick overview.
Okay. You switch to the next slide. The southwestern portion of the county along Highway 94 South, west of the conservation areas, is well recognized for its scenic attractiveness and as a tourist attraction relating to the winery businesses that are already there. This area has had increasing interest by those who are interested in further promoting tourism to the area. Next slide. Therefore, this plan was drafted with a number of objectives, and they're listed in the plan, but it can best be summarized by what's on this slide. It's to provide for the expansion of tourism and economic development within this portion of the county in a way that is non-obtrusive and protects and preserves agricultural lands within this scenic area. Next slide. To accomplish this objective, the plan envisions that tourist types of development could be incorporated into the area if certain development elements are utilized in the development of property. These are cluster development patterns, setbacks from roadways, hillside and existing roadside vegetation preservation, and establishing development nodes or concentration points of this type of development. Next slide. As I mentioned, clustering development is a method in which the development consists or would be developed on a very small percentage of a large site and therefore integrated into the area without being too obtrusive. Next slide. The plan proposes that if there are requirements that cause a greater setback, so the development is not right up on the road where it just takes over the appearance of an area and is set back a good distance, it will help towards integrating these things into the character of the area. Next slide. Forested areas of the site could be maintained as much as possible and incorporate the development within the site. For example, the Montel Winery conserves the hillside and forested areas and thereby maintains the openness and the attractiveness of the area. Again, another element that if those are within the types of regulations, we feel that that type of new development, tourism types of uses, can be integrated and not change the character of this area. Next slide. Existing roadside vegetation plays a large role in establishing the character of this area. By maintaining existing roadside vegetation and incorporating development into the site will facilitate the retention of this character. Again, just another element that should be considered in an ordinance. And several tourism, next slide, could be located on a single site where you'd have several uses, but again, concentrated on a very small percentage of a large site. Next slide. The description of the agri-tourism land use within the plan follows the format describing land uses in the current master plan. In summary, this land use category provides for the continued use of land for agricultural purposes and provides for agricultural tourism businesses and other tourist businesses developed subject to strict site planning and architectural design standards. And next slide. This map depicts the area where an agricultural tourism land use could be considered. Implementation of this plan will require the development of a zoning district which would incorporate the intent of the plan. Again, it's a relatively small plan. I think it gets to the point really quick. It basically establishing a new land use and where that new land use might be appropriate within the county. And what we will have to do in order to implement the plan is pass an ordinance to implement the plan, and ultimately an ordinance creating a new zoning classification that would implement the plan.
Okay, thank you. That ordinance will be introduced at the next meeting, the first meeting in October. And can we also carry the public hearing on to that meeting as well? Okay, thank you. That closes public hearing on the amendment to the 2020 master plan. Next on the agenda is public comments. You're welcome to come and speak on any item, whether it's on the agenda or not. Once we start a topic, we stay on that topic till we've had a total of 6 speakers, 3 pro, 3 con, alternating between the two. We ask that you keep your comments civil, and if we get into a topic that tends to be controversial, please let's keep it nice. Would anyone like to speak? If you come forward, you can fill out a speaker's card either before or after you speak. Keep your comments to 3 minutes. Please state your name and your address.
Thank you, Madam Councilwoman. Jorgen Schlemeyer on behalf of Ameristar Casinos, and I did fill out a card earlier. I'm here to ask you to oppose 3884, the resolution. Now, 3881 was passed a couple weeks ago, or several weeks ago, before August deadline. And in that, you had ballot wording and a charter amendment on the smoking issue. After that time, whether it was from our industry filing a lawsuit, different people looking at it, bringing to your attention, you realized there were flaws in that ballot measure. And so now 3884 comes before you, and you want to fix what happened in 3881. 3881 was passed and sent to an election authority in the prescribed time. But now the council's kind of saying, wait a minute, we want to do a do-over on this. The violation of a 36-hour rule, which some say, well, it's not really a 36-hour rule because we've got this 100-year court case that says it's not really a violation, and we really don't have to comply with that. And now you have 3884 trying to change the effect of the election. You put before the voters a question, and then you say, oh, wait a minute, we're going to change what that question means. I don't think that you can change what the question means. It is a substantive change from 3884. It's not going in and fixing a word that's spelled wrong or a comma that's in the wrong place or a citation that's incorrect. In the original 3881, the charter amendment specifically excluded or exempted places that admitted people that are 21 years of age and older. That's specifically in the charter amendment. Now, the ballot wording summarizing that charter amendment doesn't match. Doesn't match the charter amendment, doesn't match the ordinance, doesn't really match anything. So now, instead of changing the ballot wording to match the charter amendment, you're doing the reverse. You're taking out the exemption of the over 21 and saying, wait a minute, that's a substantive change. Before, in 3881, we were included in an exemption in the charter amendment. Now in 3884, we're not included any longer in the charter amendment. There's two really provisions that I believe the council has to follow. The 36-hour rule, which we've already kind of said, hey, wait a minute, you know, there's this 100-year court case out there, we don't have to follow that. The second one is you have to submit it by a certain date in August. You did that on the first one. If the interpretation of the council is going to be that we can change the charter amendment, we can change the effect of the election, and then all you have to do in future elections and ballot measures is just put a provision that says the charter amendment relating to amending the charter amendment. And then we'll just fill in what it means later. I don't think that the council should do that. I think they should stand by what they originally had on there. And if you make a mistake, you make a mistake. That's the way it goes. You come back later and try to fix that in a subsequent election. Thank you.
Thank you. That speaker was opposed to 3884. Is there anyone in favor of Bill 3884? Is there another speaker opposed to 3884? Yes, sir. You're standing. Come forward. Are you not for 3884?
I'm against what y'all are trying to do.
Then come on up.
Sure I heard you correctly.
Come on up.
I didn't see a stampede coming up. Well, I guess as Reagan would say, here we go again. My name is Chet Bokey. I live in Harvester, Missouri. And for you in TV land, if you have any opinions, you can call me. I'm in the telephone book, 636-447-8154. If you didn't get it, watch the replay. You know, it's another attempt, no doubt, this widespread, something bigger than you and I's behind this. It's everywhere, trying to get anti-smoking. If you go back through the last bill you all introduced here, you got something called liberal construction. This chapter shall be liberally construed as to further its purposes. Yeah, that's interesting. I submit to you, I'm not a bar attorney, but I think I understand what that means, to further down the road say, oh, no, we got this. Somebody smoking around a kid, 1,000 feet of a school, down the riverbank, here, there, and everywhere. It's not ended with this. I think the attorney over here made it very clear You know, I used to be a lawmaker. I know a little bit, not a whole lot, but enough to be dangerous. If you look through some of these things, it says, except the following bans and this, that, and the other, private resident is excluded under this law should it pass, unless it is used as a licensed daycare facility. Well, I'm sure you'd like to add on about 100 more businesses after this would pass if the voters would go for it. I think they're smarter than that, whether they're smokers or not. This is another attack on our freedoms and liberties. I ask, is there a problem, or is someone creating a problem on the board or elsewise? I think that's probably feasible and reasonable. I don't hear of any outcries, public outcries, oh, we got to stop smoking here, there, and everywhere. You make the laws, you pick them up, make them up as you go. Have you heard that? They've been beating, your phone been ringing day and night? They've been up here and by the droves. Have they? I haven't seen them. What am I missing here? Is there some political dollars maybe going to be coming your way if certain people get their ways on this? Well, probably. You know, I kind of call this a conspiracy. St. Louis County had it, and everybody's trying to spread it all over. You know why? Because maybe it didn't work quite as good. You know, Fallon, maybe it ain't working quite as good for the business owners. We can hear statistics. Oh, yeah, my business is up 30%, my business is down 10%. I think they want an equal playing field. And I can tell you, this is no way to get it. Let it go. Forget it. Let's move on to real business here in St. Charles County. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Mayor Sally Faith.
Thank you for this opportunity, and I've asked Michael Spurgeon, the city administrator, to come and give a few more things. I know we got 3 minutes total, so I understand. First of all, I'm here tonight to request that Bill number 3884 be tabled to enable the city of St. Charles to evaluate the option of doing a citywide smoking ban. And at this time, I'd like to ask the city council members if you could just stand. Those that are in the audience, Jerry. Where's Tom? Thank you. And I appreciate them coming out in support of this issue. I'm just going to give you a few reasons why I'm asking for 3884 to be withdrawn. The first one is it reflects two options and it's confusing. And I think that carries over from the first in 3881 that was passed in August. The second thing is the city needs time to evaluate what all of our possibilities are and how we can handle it. And we don't. There just would not be time. And so, if it is tabled, it provides that opportunity. The third point is the city has a possibility to lose $2.6 to $3 million per year that covers currently police, fire, and street improvements, and that's where those funds are directed to. So that those are the people that will be affected. There would be no way, unless we can find another. I don't know. There's no way. There's no way that we could pick up that income to help the city residents, and they will feel the ramifications of it. I'd like Michael to talk a little bit about it.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, members of the County Council. I appreciate this opportunity. As Mayor Faith mentioned, she asked me just to point out some facts and figures in regards to what the impact of this bill, should it go before the voters and be approved, could do to the city of St. Charles. First and foremost, I wanted to state that all gaming dollars received help the city of St. Charles maintain an aging infrastructure and help meet the day-to-day expenses. In fact, the gaming revenues that we receive help keep taxes in our city lower. Our records indicate that over the last 6 years, the city has received an average of about $14 million in gaming taxes and admission fees from casino. That goes for once again, for paying for the day-to-day operations and for our aging infrastructure. We actually are collecting as much, if not more, in sales and gaming tax as we do in sales and utility taxes, so it's become an integral part of the revenue sources we receive to pay for the expenses for our community. Like other communities, they have a source of revenue. This is a very important source of revenue to the city of St. Charles. The mayor's already mentioned that the potential loss is between $2.6 and $3 million a year. $2.6 and $3 million a year is what we stand to lose. In addition to the approximately 300 private jobs that would be lost at the casino, not to include the other jobs that would be lost around the county, there is no way that we could absorb that type of loss. The city of St. Charles would have to let individuals go, including our police and fire and other important departments. And I just wanted one more point, is that if we had the same budget, counted on the same budget, if we didn't have gaming, it would cost the taxpayers of our community an additional $230 a year in property taxes to be able to support the same level of services we have. Thank you.
And if I could just close and say in closing that please let St. Charles City officials have the opportunity to decide and make that decision on the budget that the city has. Thank you.
Is there anyone else to speak on this topic this evening? Mr. Klinghammer.
You've had three and I'm on the same side, so I'm going to ask you a little leeway on that.
I understand.
Thank you. Council members, thank you very much. I won't reiterate the same things that have already been said. Just one other point that I'd like you all to consider, and that is that with a mere 44 or 45 days left before the election, we don't have time to get the word out, the importance of this issue to the city of St. Charles, the residents that would be voting on it in the city as well as the entire county. There simply is not enough time remaining before the November 6th ballot. We would have to do a campaign to let people know the implications of what it means to them, to their pocketbooks, to the services that are delivered from the municipal government, that the financial implication would be extreme. We would have to, as Michael has already stated, would either need to cut services, and that would come in the form of police, fire, and street workers. Those are the three largest parts of city government. If we eliminate, even on the low side of $2.5 million, that's a $200 and some odd increase to the average property tax to keep the services level. Could we do that? That would be extremely difficult. Actually, right now, there's not even room in the property tax rates to raise them that much. So we'd be forced then to do both items, to raise taxes and to cut services. Just another point to consider. I don't believe that 40 some odd days is enough time for the voters of St. Charles County to make a truly informed decision on this issue. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else to speak on this topic this evening? Is there anyone to speak on any other topic? Hearing none, I'm sorry? Yes, please.
Amanda Stapleton Cloud. I'm the homeowner at 987 Land's End Drive, asking you to support the Bill 3882 to reverse the variance report for our fence. What we're asking to do is to build a 4-foot picketed fence that goes into our side yard. We understand the ordinance. We realize it's out there. We want to build the fence because we have a very, very active 2-year-old son, and by enclosing more of our space, we sit on one of the busiest streets in our neighborhood. We'd be able to protect him, his toys, any of his neighbor friends that he had over from running into the street, possibly getting hit. The ordinance allows fences to be built on a corner lot. It, in fact, allows them to be built up to 6 feet tall within a foot of the street, and it allows them to be privacy fences as long as your neighbors don't face towards the street. Unfortunately, our neighbors do face towards the street, so that's where we're running up against the wall. However, we've talked to all of their neighbors. We've talked to more neighbors and have even been notified of this hearing or the past appeal that we've applied for. And they're all saying, go for it. It's your yard. Do what you want. We don't care. It's not going to affect us. We see no problems. We understand it, but we'd like you to look at the variance in the appeal process for the reason it's out there, to look at it as an individual, unique case. It doesn't set a precedence for what's going to happen down the future because each of those cases will also be considered on a unique individual case. Realize that we're not putting up a 6-foot privacy fence. We're putting up a 4-foot picketed fence. We're not going up to 1 foot of the street. We're going at least 15 feet away from the street. So we'd just like to thank you for looking over this and taking the time to do it. I'd like to thank John White for coming out and actually looking at our house and seeing what we're asking you to do. And just please look at it as an individual case and let us protect our family, protect our home by extending our fence out into the side yard. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dienhoff.
Good evening, County Council members. A.C. Dienhoff, County resident. This is on all the propositions that have been before this council for the last 3 weeks. It's quite alarming that you as elected officials have let this happen. It was learned late this afternoon from the Election Authority Director that this county has to hire, or Mr. Krismer has to hire outside legal counsel because the County Counselor's Office has failed to represent him in the Quo Warranto case before the Circuit Court in Division 1 tomorrow morning. That bill is going to cost taxpayers between $10,000 to $25,000. And I don't understand why our county counselor has refused to give Mr. Krismer legal representation in court tomorrow. That's alarming to me. This whole issue could have been averted if the county council followed the procedures of our home rule governed county charter, which is very sacred. Section 9.300 states that the general election of November 2000 and every 10 years thereafter, the county council may submit to the voters the question, shall there be a charter amendment commission to amend the charter? That would allow transparency of the process, open dialogue, public hearings, gathering of information, and the fairness to the taxpayers that you represent and should be your #1 priority. Also is what grave concern in the case of Dienhoff versus St. Charles County and the County Election Authority, which was heard today at 1 o'clock and will be continued tomorrow morning at 10:30, is the fiscal note must be required so the voter knows all of the heavy fiscal impacts that we're talking about on each one of these propositions. I think it's a major concern, and I hope that this county administration and the county council has learned your lesson. To quote from the county election director, that the voters are given as much information and detail as possible and they are requested to vote on issues that directly impact them in the administration of government that they are to be governed in this county. The process by which this administration and county council are asking their citizens to vote on changes to the St. Charles County Charter should be deliberate, thoughtful, and most consider the long-range ramifications and the consequences of their actions. Amending the St. Charles County Charter should be very sobering and a structured process, a process that should require thoughtful deliberation and consideration, a process that should be never be undertaken in a way that these bills were hurled through with little consideration for the language as defined by the county charter, federal and state laws. I hope we all learn our lesson here, because to do this process in 14 days, these issues should have been discussed, pounded out, hammered out, public thought, public input, and testimony gathered 6 to 8 months before putting this before voters. I think we need to think twice, and I think we need to install a county review commission, as the charter states, to have an open, transparent, and fair process. The fiscal impact on these bills, especially the one with the sheriff and the police issue, we're talking about millions of dollars, and I think that the taxpayer and the voter needs to know that information. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else to speak on any topic this evening? If not, that closes public hearing. Next on the agenda is, public comments. Next is oral report from the county executive.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to yield a portion of my time to Mr. Gross.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to read something here for the record. On June 1st, 2012, we were notified that not only was it the last day for our retiring IS director, but the assistant director would be leaving as well. Dave was next in line to keep the ship from sinking until a new IS director could be hired. Dave accepted the challenge and was appointed the acting director. Quote, the past few weeks have been a 180-degree complete turnaround with our experiences with what is left of the IS department. They have dealt with matters that have been pending for months and address all necessary needs we pose to them with appropriate priority. What a positive glimmer of hope for the future. It is amazing what folks can do when they're allowed to do it. These were the comments I received in an unsolicited email on June 20th from Sheriff Tom Neer. His complimentary email was indicative of the general reaction I received during Dave's short tenure as acting director. There were far too many projects underway and pending for Dave just to be a caretaker of the department. Dave took the ball and ran with it. In just a month and a half, relations with departments had greatly improved, employee morale was up significantly, key vacancies had been filled with competent new staff, innovative procedures had been proposed and implemented. Dave was building a team and getting things done. Due to the efforts of Dave and the IS team, and I want to emphasize the IS team because they did come together. It was not just Dave, but he was the leader. The department is a far better place than it was a few months ago. I can't imagine a more difficult situation to be put in at a more crucial time. So on behalf of the county executive and St. Charles County government, I'm proud to present this letter of commendation to Dave Ridgway for his exemplary service as acting director of IS.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, I'd also like to yield a portion of my time to the county councilor to.
His microphone went out, but he said he yielded me a little time here.
Okay.
Because of the public comment that was made, I just want to explain. I think the chair understands this because we've been in communication, but for the entire council, we most certainly have not determined not to represent Mr. Crismer. But it is Mr. Crismer's decision about whether or not to use this office. I cannot require him, under the circumstances where you've passed a bill that he's in conflict with, to use our office. I provided an instruction to Mr. Ellis to consult with his client and to tell his client if he chooses to use our office, he's purely at Mr. Crismer's behest. We will not provide any instruction to Mr. Ellis to not follow whatever Mr. Crismer's decisions and directions are. So he's free to use him. He's free to not use him. We've done everything we can, some of which I can't talk about in public, in order to alleviate the conflict so that if Mr. Crismer did want to use Mr. Ellis, that he could do that. But it is Mr. Crismer's decision in the end, and he has to make that. I cannot make it for him. But we are available, and the staff, not only Mr. Ellis, but I cut another lawyer loose who's been uninvolved in this, has been preparing so that if Mr. Crismer does determine to use them, that they are available to him. But in the end, we can't make that decision for him. He has the right to make it himself under the circumstances.
Okay. Thank you.
Finally, Madam Chairman, I think Craig Dukowski is going to make a short report here on his department.
Good evening, members of the council. As the county executive said, I've got a brief presentation tonight about the county highway department. What I wanted to do tonight is not focus so much on projects, but rather focus on the department itself, tell you a little bit about us, about some of the background to the department. Basically, what do we do? Who are we? How are we funded? And in summary, kind of look at what we've done over the past 10 or 12 years. Basically, what do? We oversee, maintain, and improve the public right-of-way in the unincorporated areas of St. Charles County. You know, everybody knows about the maintenance, everybody knows about the improvements, but the overseeing is part that probably doesn't get a lot of attention. One thing that I would like to point out, though, again, is that we are only responsible for the county roadways. We are not responsible, have no jurisdiction over any state routes, over any city streets, unless we have a maintenance agreement with that city. So our focus is on the county roads in the unincorporated areas of the county. When we talk about overseeing the right-of-way, state statutes require that we issue permits for any work that takes place on the county right-of-way, whether it be by a contractor, a developer, a utility company, or even residents. If they want to go out and redo the end of their driveway that extends out to the county right-of-way and connects to the county road, they're required to come in and get a permit. It's a pretty simple process, and it typically goes without a hitch. We also, of course, maintain the public right-of-way. That ranges a whole lot of different things. The pothole patching, the snow removal, all those things come to mind. But we also maintain other public improvements, whether it be the signage, the striping, the storm sewers. A lot more goes into it than just the roadbed itself. And of course, we also make improvements to the roadways and right-of-ways, whether it be upgrading signage along a road to make it safer, whether it be restriping from time to time, whether it be taking a road that has ditches and putting in curb and gutter and enclosed storm sewers. So that's one of the key components that we do that everyone sees. And basically, who are we? We're broken up into 3 divisions. It's not a real hard, fast rule, but basically we have an administration, maintenance division, and a construction division. We have about 12 people working in the administration end, 90 people working in the maintenance end, and 15 people working in the construction end. We have 14 engineers on staff, 6 of which are registered professional engineers, and those 6 have a combined experience of over 120 years as registered engineers. So we do have a very capable, very professional staff on board, and we're supported by 5 clerical positions. We're funded, as you can see, a myriad of different ways. We get the road and bridge portion of the personal and real property tax, and that amounts to about $15 million annually. We get an allocation from the half-cent transportation sales tax each year, and that comes either for general improvements to the rural roads of the county or for project-specific, road-specific projects. We have the motor vehicle and fuel tax revenues, which amounts to about $4 million a year. And then, of course, we get federal funds that are distributed through the East-West Gateway Council of Governments. The administrative division basically takes on the task of acquiring the needed right-of-way for any new road and bridge project. We also perform in-house design on some of our smaller projects, which saves us quite a bit of money in consultant fees. We also administer engineering contracts with consultants when we get a project larger than what we're capable of handling. And of course, we talked about the special use permits, and we also perform the regular department function of payroll, purchasing, those kind of things. Maintenance division duties, most of these things everyone's aware of, anything from patching to slab replacement to box culvert construction, traffic signal maintenance. I mean, we have a large gamut of tasks that our maintenance folks are responsible for. The construction division is primarily out there inspecting work to make sure it's done to the standards that are either established through the UDO for our subdivision improvements or through our standard specifications for highway projects. And we have both engineers working in that division and also non-engineers, and they cover, like I said, everything from subdivision improvements to major road projects. And to wrap up real quick, what have we done since 2000? We've improved over 30 major roads. You can see the list there. Thinking back, I'm looking at one particular Birdie Hills Road just 5 or 6 years ago. That was a 2-lane road with no curb and gutter. And look at what it is today and envision what that would be like now if it was still the 2-lane road that it was before. And we've got many others on this list and many more to come. We've overlaid 480 miles of roadway. We've replaced 26,250 concrete slabs. We've replaced 24 bridges and added 16 traffic signals since 2000. In 2000, we had 10 deficient bridges. We're down to 2 today, and both of those are funded to be replaced in 2013, 2014. So if everything goes well, we'll be down to 0 deficient bridges after that time. In 2000, we had 675 miles of roadways and 0 traffic signals. Now we've got roughly 765 miles of roadways and 16 traffic signals. So we've experienced the growth in our responsibilities just like the county has. And we've accomplished all this using $40 million in federal funds, roughly $105 million in half-cent transportation sales tax funds, and we also utilize the road and bridge tax revenues and the motor vehicle and fuel tax revenues that I mentioned earlier. And lastly, as you all know, since 2010, the airport has been under our department. They maintain over 100 acres of ground and have 97 hangars available for lease. They do all that with 3 full-time employees. They estimate the number of takeoff and landings out there at over 100,000 a year, which was shocking when I heard that, but it is a fairly busy place. And there's businesses operating at the airport with 45 full-time and part-time personnel with a payroll of almost $1 million. So there's quite a fiscal impact at the airport also. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have, either project-specific or in general.
Are there any questions? I don't think so, but thank you for your report. You do a great job.
Thank you.
And you always answer all of our emails within an hour.
We try.
Thank you. Is that it, Mr. Executive? Okay. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Are there any items to be removed? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as written?
Motion. Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Please say nay. Consent agenda is approved. Next on the agenda is, well, we have items removed from the consent agenda at a previous meeting for community development. Is there a motion to accept that report? I believe you withdrew that, Mr. Cronin?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Mr. Doherty, did you get your answers?
I would like to leave it off. We got a meeting tomorrow about it.
Okay. Moving on, next is the resolution 12-13, declaring the month of November as Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month. And Nina Dean, if you would meet me at the podium, please.
Resolution 12-13, sponsored by Council as a whole. A resolution declaring the month of November as Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month in the County of St. Charles, Missouri. Whereas in 2012, an estimated 43,920 people will be diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in the United States, and an estimated 37,390 will die from the disease. And whereas pancreatic cancer is one of the deadliest cancers and is the fourth leading cause of cancer death in the United States, and whereas when symptoms of pancreatic cancer present themselves, it is usually too late for an optimistic prognosis, and 74% of pancreatic cancer patients die within the first year of their diagnosis, while 94% of pancreatic cancer patients die within the first 5 years. And whereas of all the racial ethnic groups in the United States, African Americans have the highest incident rate of pancreatic cancer, between 34% and 70% higher than the other groups, and whereas there is no cure for pancreatic cancer, and there have been no significant improvements in survival rates in the last 40 years. And whereas the federal government invests significantly less money in pancreatic cancer research than it does in any other leading cancer killers, and pancreatic cancer research constitutes only approximately 2% of the National Cancer Institute's federal research funding, a figure far too low given the severity of the disease, its mortality rate, and how little is known about how to arrest it. And whereas the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network is the first and only national patient advocacy organization that serves the pancreatic cancer community in St. Charles County and nationwide by focusing its efforts on public policy, research funding, patient services, and public awareness and education related to developing effective treatments and a cure for pancreatic cancer. And whereas the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network and its affiliates in St. Charles County support those patients currently battling pancreatic cancer, as well as those who have lost their lives to the disease and are committed to nothing less than a cure. And whereas the good health and well-being of the residents of St. Charles County are enhanced as a direct result of increased awareness about pancreatic cancer and research into early detection, causes, and effective treatments. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the County Council of St. Charles County, Missouri as follows. Section 1, the County Council hereby designates the month of November 2012 as Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month in St. Charles County, Missouri.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you have some comments you'd like to make?
I do. I'm sorry. I am going to cry. There was a picture of him. Oh, there it is. Last year I came before you to get the same. And last year there was a man in a wheelchair over there. This year there is no man in a wheelchair over there. My husband passed away on December 28th. As you can see, he was a Marine. He was also a sailor. He gave 20 years of his life to this country. He was 54. He looks a lot older, doesn't he? He was 54 years old when he passed away. I have some good news for us in the pancreatic community. Last Tuesday, the United States Congress passed a bill for recalcitrant cancers, which are cancers that have less than a 5% survival rate for people who have it for 5 years, which is what pancreatic cancer has. And they passed a bill to put more money into research for pancreatic cancer and have the National Cancer Institute take over directing all the different research, which is really important because right now we have 3 different pancreatic cancer organizations all doing their own research. And so there's a lot of overlapping and things money being wasted. We're now waiting for the Senate to take care of it. Here's the scary part, and it's for all of you. There is no diagnosis for this. My husband went to the doctor for 6 months. They told him he had sciatica. What he had was a tumor that ate the whole left side of his pelvis. Okay? He sat when they said he had cancer, we took him to the cancer center. He sneezed and his pelvis broke in half. Okay? There's no way to diagnose this, and you will die. That's the end of the story. By 2020, there's a guarantee this will be the 2nd highest cancer killer in the United States. Okay? It has not changed in 40 years, except for to go up. If you get breast cancer, good news, ladies, you have a 90% chance of survival rate. If you get pancreatic cancer, you have a 0 chance. So I appreciate that every year I come here and I ask for this, and every year you guys give it to me. We do it to tell our representatives in Washington that we actually do care about this, and it's really important to everybody. And so I want to thank you. I slip a little picture in here. This is what he used to look like. This was what he looked like 13 months before he passed away. And that's the grandchild who will never remember him. So, okay, maybe next year I won't cry. I cry less every year. Thank you.
A resolution declaring the month of November as Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month in the County of St. Charles, Missouri. Councilmember Cronin?
Yes.
Councilmember Brazel?
Yes.
Councilmember Matheny?
Yes.
Councilmember Hollander?
Yes.
Councilmember Doherty?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Next on the agenda would be bills for final passage. First bill, 3882.
Bill number 3882, an ordinance reversing the Board of Zoning Adjustments decision and variance 15354.
Are there any questions or comments?
I did
Mr.
go
White?
out and visit this residence and spoke with the owners, and everything she said was true. I mean, it is a four-way stop. There's no sight problem at all, and they are going to put up a very attractive picket fence that you can see through. So I'm going to support this. I don't see any problem with it whatsoever.
I can't remember on this one. Was the board split on their decision
There
when
was,
they voted this down?
It was split, yes.
3-2, and it takes a supermajority to override.
Correct.
Okay, and you recommend approval?
I do.
All right. Is there any other comments or questions? Would you read the title and call the roll, please?
Bill number 3882, an ordinance reversing the Board of Zoning Adjustments decision and variance 15354. Councilmember Brazel?
Yes.
Councilmember Matheny?
Yes.
Councilmember Hollander?
Yes.
Councilmember Doherty?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Cronin?
Yes.
Bill passes. Bill 3883.
Bill number 3883, an ordinance authorizing execution of subrecipient agreements with the City of St. Peters and with Saints Joachim and Ann Care Service, and further authorizing execution of an agreement with the City of St. Peters for administering St. Charles County's own CDBG programs.
Questions or comments from the council? Seeing none, would you read the title and call the roll, please?
An ordinance authorizing execution of subrecipient agreements with the City of St. Peters and with Saints Joachim and Ann Care Service, and further authorizing execution of an agreement with the City of St. Peters for administering St. Charles County's own CDBG programs. Councilmember Matheny?
Yes.
Councilmember Hollander?
Yes.
Councilmember Doherty?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Cronin?
Yes.
Councilmember Brazel?
Yes.
Bill 3883 passes. Moving on to Bill 3884.
Bill number 3884, an ordinance amending Section 1H and Section 2 of Ordinance 12-063.
Questions or comments from the council? Mr. Cronin.
Okay. I think everyone knows that Ms. Leykam had a couple of emissions in the bill. The ballot language has not changed any. We're not changing what's going to the voters. We're cleaning up a couple of housekeeping mistakes at the advice of the council. I also want the city of St. Charles to realize, I heard you all loud and clear, but also you have to understand that the city of St. Peters, the city of Cottleville, and the city of Dardenne Prairie also sent us resolutions asking us to put this on the ballot. Additionally, I shared with Mayor Faith and Mr. Klinghammer the City of O'Fallon's sales tax revenues and Department of Revenue statistics from the year before the smoking ban in O'Fallon and the year after. I was at a Chamber of Commerce meeting on Thursday, and I went thinking I would get jumped on over the smoking bill like I've been getting jumped on for the last year. But I was pleasantly surprised because it's not been a problem there. There was 138 bars and restaurants in the year prior to the ordinance passed in O'Fallon. There's an average of 142.8 the first year, so they had actually an increase of 3.4% in bars and restaurants. And that's according to Missouri Department of Revenue. That's who's counting it. Bar and restaurant sales tax revenue to the city of O'Fallon, according to Missouri Department of Revenue, was up 8.4% year prior to the law, year after the law. So regardless of how you think about this, those are numbers that this Department of Revenue has given us. And ultimately, I think the court and the people of this county will decide this issue, whether it's on the ballot in this election or future election.
Thank you, Mr. Cronin. Are there any other comments? Mr. Brazel.
Joanne, I got a couple questions for you. On page 21 of the ordinance, not this ordinance, but the prior ordinance, smoking ordinance, it says, I think Chad was talking about it, says liberal construction, and it can be amended for further purposes. What does that mean?
It refers to the ordinance. The ordinance would still have to conform to the charter amendment.
So that means that after it's voted on, it can be changed?
Well, you can always change an ordinance. You couldn't change the charter later without a vote of the people. You change ordinances, you amend ordinances all the time.
But since this is going to a vote of the people, doesn't it have to be, don't they have to know exactly what they're voting on?
They're voting on the charter amendment.
Okay, so that means that it can be changed after it's passed, correct?
The charter amendment cannot be changed if it ends up on the ballot and the voters vote for the charter amendment. The charter amendment, as they would vote on it at that time, cannot be changed. The language that they're voting on has already gone to the election authority on the deadline. You all determined on the 15th not to change that and send alternate language. That is the language before them that the voters will vote on.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand this, and I apologize for not being at the meeting Saturday, but I knew that I was a minority on the whole position, so I didn't want to waste a Saturday. So on what I do like to know is if it was supposed to be submitted 36 hours prior for the people to look at it, how can we change it now? And it's not in the what we're changing now was not in the content of what we passed on the floor. I mean,
I think you're mixing a couple of things. The 36 hours has to do with when you all send ordinances to the registrar and you don't read them in full. That refers, the way Mr. Cronin asked for the bill to be structured was the ordinance that would be in effect after, and if I get this wrong, Mr. Cronin, please correct me, but as I understood it, he wanted the ordinance that would be in effect if the voters voted the charter amendment. He wanted the charter amendment out there, and he wanted the language for the ballot reflecting the charter. As you know, there was a change between the first bill and the second bill in terms of an approach. So the language, and if you remember, Council Chair Matheny read in full the language that was going on the ballot. This bill fixes the charter and the ordinance language so that they are in sync with the language that is going to the ballot.
You know, I mean, I'm hearing everything you're saying, but I got to tell you, it's confusing as hell. And the thing is if it's confusing to me, and We've went over this thing 3 times. I mean, this has been turned down 3 times by this council. And then it passes a 4th time. Hasn't it been three times?
Twice.
After it was vetoed?
Veto, first time, second time, Mr. Matheny voted no.
See, I'm even confused how many times it's been turned down. So anyway, it's been turned down 2 times, and this is the 3rd time. And then the language is confusing. There's legal issues with it. The election authority turns it down. I mean, you guys, this is a problem bill. It really is. And I don't even know why we keep pushing this thing so hard when we have council members who voted against it, for it, against it, for it. I'm opposed to this. And I guess what happens is if this doesn't pass, then it doesn't get put on the ballot. Is that correct?
I can't tell you that. Only a judge can tell you that. There is a lawsuit tomorrow morning, Mr. Young versus Mr. Krismer. We are not a part of that. This council made a determination that it would not take action against Mr. Krismer. We will not be a part of that because of that as a county. It's between Mr. Young and Mr. Krismer. And the issue in that Mr. Young's petition raises is that the language is clear of what's being asked to be put on the ballot.
So by voting no for this makes it less acceptable to be put on the ballot. Is that correct? You don't know.
I mean, I have a legal opinion as to that, but you know,
well, see,
do you really want to have that discussion here?
We just keep doing all this stuff, just throwing it on the walls. Hopefully something's going to stick eventually. And I don't even know why we're doing this. I mean, if we've rejected it so many times, and it's just a mess. It's very messy. And for that reason alone, the council should vote no for this, let the court handle it, and then, because you folks, was passed once, and then we keep changing it, we keep massaging it, trying to make it work. It just isn't going to work. It's not good for St. Charles County, and I think it's a bad idea. So that's my opinion.
Is there anyone else to speak on this issue? Mr. Doherty.
Yes, I think all the comments that were made in public comment were all valid. I think we ought to take the weight of every one of them. I agree with Joe 100%. I mean, we've done past the 11th hour on this thing. This would be the 3rd time. Now we're to the 15th hour. How many times are we going to change it? All along, I said this is a violation of the freedom of the business owners, and it's a violation, and it's a slap in the face to the veterans that fought to keep that freedom. It's pretty simple choice. I don't eat Chinese food, so I don't go to Chinese restaurants. So you ought to have the same thing with smoke. Thank you.
Mr. White.
I'd just like to hear from the attorney from the casino. I want to ask him one question.
He's not an attorney.
Well, he speaks so eloquently, he sounds like an attorney.
He dresses like an attorney, but he's not an attorney.
That suit's pretty good.
Unless the attorney. Yes, sir.
I was just curious, you know, in the years past, this has come up, and have you lobbied either St. Louis County or St. Louis City to see if they would pass legislation that if you did become smoke-free, that they would pass something to make their casinos smoke-free? Have you pursued that avenue?
No, we don't. No, in fact, one of the, I think I understand your question. You're asking if Ameristar becomes smoke-free, will we then pursue?
No, have you in the past? Have you surely have assumed at some point in the future that this could happen. Have you gone to those governments and asked them if this does happen, you know, in St. Charles County, would St. Louis County go smoke-free and would St. Louis City go smoke-free? Or the reverse, if St. Louis County became smoke-free, would you have an agreement with them to also be smoke-free so that you would all compete evenly?
Well, competing evenly, you've hit the nail on the head. Exactly right.
I know that.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking you. Have you pursued that?
No, we have not. I'll tell you. So I would say I represent Ameristar only. We're not going to go into another venue and ask them to impose something on another boat, just as we would expect Harrah's not to come into St. Charles and do the same. So we have not gone to St. Louis County or St. Louis City asking them to either pass or not pass a smoking ordinance.
But don't you think that would be prudent as a business to do that, to protect yourselves?
No, and here's why. The Gaming Commission every year presents to a joint committee on gaming, which is 5 senators and 5 representatives. And when presenting to that panel, they said, look, here's where the revenues are for gaming in the state of Missouri. And if you can kind of imagine a ticker like the stock market kind of goes up and down each month. And then there's this little spike. And one of the legislators said, what's that spike? Why did the revenue go up so much in Missouri? And the Gaming Commission said, oh, that's easy. That's when Illinois passed its smoking ban. It shoved all of their smoking customers over to Missouri. And we were the recipient. Our schools were the recipient. Our local governments were the recipient. We were building parks instead of them because they decided to come and give us their money instead of to Illinois. The same thing would happen. I think somebody made it, and Councilwoman, it may have been you several meetings ago, this needs to be a statewide, I suspect it needs to be a Midwest-wide. When you have Missouri with all of its population on the borders, if you think of where all of our population is, it's on the borders, and that's where our casinos are. Kansas City has put a smoking ban in, they exempted casinos. St. Louis City, they exempted casinos. St. Louis County, they exempted casinos. There's no other place in the nation, in fact, that has a smoking ban imposed by a local government on a casino. And for us to be the first, I can tell you it would be a detrimental impact to the revenues of the city of St. Charles. And I suspect Harrah's would invite you all to pass a ban because they will, if you open the blind right there, we can see Harrah's. They're going to drive right there, and that's exactly who's going to get all the revenue if this goes through.
Well, that makes my point. This is something that you should have been working on.
Well, it should be regional.
I agree with you. It should be a regional thing, but
and not just like St. Louis region. I'm talking about a larger region, but no. To answer your question, we have not actually imposed a smoking ban in other areas.
All right. Well, thanks for answering it for me.
Okay, please stay there for a moment. Mr. Cronin has a question for you.
Doesn't Ameristar operate a casino in Colorado that is smoke-free and also an industry leader? That's my first question in that state. And secondly, didn't Ameristar recently buy land in Massachusetts to build a new casino facility there? And is the entire state of Massachusetts smoke-free?
That's right. So 2 issues. First of all, in Colorado, they are smoke-free. And if Ameristar was situated in Missouri, like they are in Colorado, you may not have as big of an issue because people aren't going to drive several hundred miles to get to the next casino. You probably have a pretty good market. In Springfield, the same issue. While there are going to be several casinos, Ameristar knows what the rules are when they go into Massachusetts. We're telling you up front before you invest $1, there is going to be no smoking in a casino. And they know that immediately. Here, the Gaming Commission says, you, in order to get a license, have to invest $600 and some odd million. Sometimes legislators like to make them look a certain way when they sponsor bills down there. But they knew what the rules were coming into Missouri, and their business plan was based on smokers being able to come in their casino. Then to say, thank you for spending the $650 million, we're going to change your business plan without being able to slice off part of your debt for you. It doesn't work that way. So,
isn't that what happened in Colorado, though? The law was passed after the casino was open.
17%. No, so in 17% decline. There you go, 17% decline in Colorado. Mm-hmm. I can also tell you that we operate in Kansas City, and there was an exemption there.
Well, and you may also get an exemption in this market too, if the second part of that ballot question passes.
Yeah. Do you have any other questions, Mr. Cronin?
Yeah, no, that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Hollander?
One of the things that I think that we need to look at here that we hadn't had a chance to look at was the city of St. Charles and possibly other communities approaching us about the fact that they intended to look into this issue. I think that would have been of considerable interest to us, and probably use to us if this information that they very eloquently, explained tonight would have been at our fingertips a month ago, 2 months ago. So it certainly, it certainly does make you, think a little bit about, where that information was. And again, I don't know if that would have changed anyone's mind. I certainly think that several of us probably would have had to revisit the issue had we known that they have intentions of doing that. So,
I would like, Sally, could you come up for a moment? Can I ask you a question, please? Oh, I'm sorry. Madam Chair.
He forgets procedure. Yes, Mr. Brazel. Ms. Faith, would you please come forward?
Sorry. Oh.
It's like Mary Ann said aye when you guys voted a while ago. Mary Ann Holmes. It's just a habit. Okay.
Sally,
yes, sir.
You guys do plan on doing something with the smoking ban in the next 6 months or something, or would you?
Well, and you're right. We'll start working on it right away. We've got to gather information as to what is the best way to approach it, and what's the pros and the cons, and the pros and the cons, and that information then needs to be given to the council members, and then we'll start meeting on it and make that decision as to what direction it's going to go in. And when I say that, I mean we need to do something. I don't mean this in a slap-happy way, but I think it's important that the city of St. Charles drives the bus instead of following behind it. And I can't answer what happened 2 years ago. It was a different mayor. So this council, as you can see by their attendance, and my commitment as mayor, is we want to drive the bus, and we're planning on doing that. The question is how, when, and so I can't commit to 6 months, but we'll start working on it right away. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just, yeah, it does. I was just, even though I'm opposed to it, it makes more sense if a city wants to do, especially the city that has a casino in it, they could have more control over how they want to ride it. But I just think that information should be good for the council members to pass it, to not pass this bill tonight. It's still really confusing whether or not what we're even talking about this for, because no one knows what the hell it means anyway.
What's going to happen tomorrow?
So no, thank you, Sally.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
The first time we took up this topic, we passed an ordinance to have a smoking ban, which had some exemptions, particularly the casino. That bill was vetoed by the county executive because it selected winners and losers. It didn't have a level playing field. The next bill that came forward to us was introduced by Mr. Cronin, was a total smoking ban, no exemptions. And I voted against that one because I feel that St. Charles County should be on an equal playing field with St. Louis County, and St. Louis County has exemptions. So the compromise was, let's let the voters decide. Let's have 2 items on the agenda. Do you want a smoking ban, yes or no? And if there is a smoking ban, should there be exemptions? And under the exemptions, we put the fraternal organizations, we put the casino, we put the over 21, we put anyone that should have an exemption other than restaurants. Then it was discussed that this was confusing, that voters couldn't handle 2 questions. Should there be a smoking ban? Should there be an exemption? If you vote yes for one and no for the other, or no for one and yes for the other, what does that mean? I think a judge is going to rule on that tomorrow, and whether that's too confusing. When we met a week ago Saturday, we met to discuss where we were going to go from here. And our decision was that we were going to continue with cleaning up the language behind what went to the voters. which is the ordinance before us tonight, but that we did not want to go forward with anything that would create legal costs, court costs, costs to reprint ballots, and as this goes forward, the time for part of the reason to having the exemptions with all of you together was that so you could all get together and figure out how to plead to the voters. In fact, it's called Proposition Fair Business, how you could plead to the voters to please let you be on a level playing field with St. Louis, the casino, the bars, the fraternal organizations, just to be treated fairly. So it's called Proposition Fair Business. However, we did say 10 days ago that we did not want to incur any legal expenses or any court costs. And what I'm afraid is that if tomorrow the judge says it has to go on the ballot, I'm afraid we're going to incur some of those costs.
Are you talking about the ballot, the cost of a supplemental ballot?
Yes. And the reason I fear that is because I don't really believe that Mr. Chrismer had the authority to keep it from the ballot. He was given the language to put on the ballot, and he did not put it on the ballot. I'm really getting tired of this whole issue, and I wish that the city would take it on. I'm torn between cleaning up the language of something that we passed a month ago and not going another step in this direction. And I really don't know where to go from here. Mr. Doherty?
We tried to get information from the election authority this afternoon. As of 4:40, 300 military ballots have already been mailed out. They called the vendor that's doing the printing for all the ballots, and there was no response to see if they were already printed. She's almost sure that the absentees were printed, but could not verify. The cost to reprint every issue would be around $300,000 to the county.
That's incorrect.
That comes straight from the election authority.
I've heard various figures quoted from $10,000 to $300,000. I don't really want to pay $10,000, let alone $300,000. Mr. Schnurr, would you care to address this issue? Have you looked into this, the potential costs involved?
I was over at the courthouse today for the first part of the proceedings on the sheriff's issue, and Mr. Chrismer was there, and I heard him talking to a couple folks there, saying that the ballots were indeed printed over the weekend. And I heard him quote a figure of around $300,000 at the time to reprint the ballots. Maybe from Ms. Leykam, at this point, I don't think it costs us any money. And correct me if I'm wrong, Joann, but a cost of reprinting the ballots at this point would be because of the initiative of Mr. Young, or whoever's bringing this, no, I'm sorry, the nonprofit organization, not the county. That's not our measure at this point, I don't think. And
the court will have to determine who has to bear it.
Okay, so it's not really determined yet who's going to pay if the amount needs to be paid. I came back over to the office a little later on, and I called the election authority. And I was told that we have had 394,000 ballots printed. And yes, the overseas and ballots did go out. Mr. Chrismer had said that. The cost of printing those ballots, according to the bid that you all passed and approved back in January, I think, the cost of printing a 14-inch two-sided ballot is 26 cents. That equates to about $103,000 for a complete reprinting of the ballots that are out there. Question remains why we have 394,000 ballots and we have 280,000 registered voters. I tried to contact Henry Adkins & Sons this afternoon as well.
Bill Vanderberg, who is their operations guy, and the gentleman who's party to all of the business deals of Henry Atkins and Sons, was not available. I tried to get him to call me by cell and did not get a call. The gentleman called me back about 5:30 and said that he would have Bill call me tomorrow. But, you know, at this point, I don't know why the number of ballots is as it is, but still $103,000 if we're going to reprint 394,000 ballots is still a sizable number. But those are the numbers as I understand them.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Hollander.
Joann, Ms. Leykam, is there, you said yes, tomorrow the judge will obviously decide the issue, and the judge will decide who must pay for the reprinting of the ballots if he indeed agrees the language of this measure is okay. In other words, is there a possibility that a judge could rule tomorrow that we would have to incur the cost of reprinting the ballots?
That is certainly one of the possibilities that's out there. You know, there's 3 lawsuits all coming together tomorrow morning. The first, logically, I would hope, is Mr. Young versus Mr. Krismer, because if the judge decides against Mr. Young in the lawsuit, there really isn't anything left of the other 2 because they get to go home happy and it's all over with. If the judge would decide that under a series of cases that look only at the ballot issue and say that other abnormalities aren't ripe until you see whether or not the voters, and would order it on, which is a possibility whether you all pass this, table it, or defeat it. That could still happen tomorrow. The judge then has to decide, was there a reason, a valid reason, and should the proponent pay for the new ballot supplement? I presume it would be a supplement and not a reprinting, but I don't know. Or should the county have to pay for that because Mr. Krismer is an official of the county and that his decision to unilaterally take the action was an error? That's the issue before the court in Mr. Young's suit. As soon as the court would determine, even preliminarily, those issues, there's a motion on the table made by Mr. Alexander's lawyers to consolidate the Ameristar Casino lawsuit, in which Mr. Hatfield is representing them, and Mr. Ellinger, who's representing Mr. Alexander's suit, to bring those together. And that then raises the issue of, does it matter that the ballot language wasn't down there 36 hours in advance, and does it matter that there's an abnormality between the language that went to the voters and that it isn't pulled up completely through the rest of the matter? There are cases that say that those things not related directly to the ballot issue are for determination after you decide whether or not the voters have voted on them. But, you know, you have a judge who has to make a lot of decisions tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Mr. White.
Just one other question. What effect does this happen whether we vote for this tonight or don't vote for it in the decision, the judge's decision? Is it something that we have to clean up for him to look at the case, or is it something we could table and wait till after his decision?
Well, any time you reduce the number of issues, you make the judge's life easier. So if the cleanup's already occurred, then those are pretty much off the table. If you table it and say we're looking at that later, then the judge has to struggle with whether or not this is a case where the issue of the matters that would only be effective after the voters vote on it are ripe at this time or not. If he determines to follow, or she, I'm not sure which one, I think Judge House has it, but part of it was in front of Judge Snyder, but I think it's going to Judge House. If they determine that those ripeness cases apply, then they won't look at the rest of the ordinance. He'll only look at the ballot measure. I can't predict to you which way the judge will go, only what the issues will be in front of him. So to answer your question again directly, so that I don't, if you pass this tonight, it takes an issue off the table. If you table it or defeat it, then that issue still has to be dealt with about whether or not those other issues are ripe.
Okay.
Mr. Cronin.
The short time I've been on this council, there's been several mistakes made on many ordinances, okay? Clerical errors happen. This bill just fixes a clerical error that was done inadvertently by the legal staff in Joann Leykam's office, okay? I'm sorry, but that's it. I mean, Joe, I've seen bills that you've had. I think the pseudo-veteran bill, I'm pretty sure we had amendment on, okay? Sometimes the clerical errors happen with the huge workload that Joann's office has got. That's what this is. To pass a bill with a clerical error and not correct it, I think sets a bad precedent. And I think we at least should, pass the corrections of this bill.
That was okay in my case because I was in favor of that bill.
I'm turning off here. Mr. Hollander.
I think the one thing that's come to light here that I didn't understand prior to my question to Ms. Leykam earlier was the possibility, and whether it's remote or good or what the possibility would be, but just the fact that there is a possibility that a judge could rule that we're going to have to pay for the reprinting or the ballots. That, I think, changes a lot, at least in my eyes, because of just the risk. As we met last Saturday, I think we were 100% in approval that we wanted nothing to do with any risk involved in suing Mr. Christmer or involving any type of legal action that would cost the county money. This seems to me like there is that possibility. I don't know what that percentage is, but just the fact that there is a possibility certainly brings a little bit a different look to this.
Okay. No other comments?
Just a question to the council members. Do you feel we should table this and wait and see what the judge does, or do you think we should proceed and vote on it?
There's no point to table it. We either vote it in or vote it down.
I call the question. Can I?
No. I want to ask Ms. Leykam a question. This bill to correct the clerical error was introduced prior to any lawsuits. It was found prior to anyone else pointing it out.
We found it the day after.
The day after.
The meeting.
If we would have acted more quickly, we've had meetings, we could have already passed it. But here we are the night before. My question to you is, what if it hadn't been caught? What if it went to the voters that way and the ordinance behind it was different? What would have been the issue? If no one had brought suit, but it went to the voters saying that, but the underlying ordinance was different? Would it just have been a cleanup, clerical? Or are they tied together that strongly?
I'm not sure I understand what you're asking, but if no one had caught it in advance and the voters had passed it, and someone brought suit saying you have two different matters, that would have been a determination that the court would have had to have made as to whether or not it would, whether or not you had a situation where it wasn't properly passed. I mean, I'm not sure the totality of what you're asking, but if you're asking, and maybe this isn't what you're asking, but I get the impression, if you're asking if you tabled it tonight, could you still pass it?
Yeah.
If it's put on the ballot, yes, you could.
Okay.
If you defeat it tonight, the judge puts it on the ballot, you can reintroduce it and pass it in October.
Okay.
It goes to, in part, what Mr. Brazel was saying about trying to achieve whatever clarity you can here. So.
Mm-hmm. But we could table it tonight, and if the judge rules to put it on the ballot, then we could pass this at the next, pull it off the table and pass it to clean up. Because this is actually amending the charter. This language amends the charter.
Only if the voters vote the language in that was sent in Bill 10063 to the voters. Yes, if the voters vote that in, then this language is necessary to clean up the charter.
Okay.
Language.
I haven't heard a motion to table. I was just curious. All right. Is there a motion to table? If not, would you read the title and call the roll, please?
Bill number 3884, an ordinance amending Section 1H and Section 2 of Ordinance 12-063. Councilmember Hollander?
No.
Councilmember Daugherty?
No.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Cronin?
Yes.
Councilmember Brazel?
No.
Councilmember Matheny?
It doesn't matter. No. It can still be reintroduced if it's ordered to be put on the ballot, is the way I understand it. Is that not true? Okay.
Explain to them why your vote didn't matter.
The reason my vote didn't matter was because it needed 4 votes to pass, and it would not have 4 votes. My vote would have only been the 3rd. So I went with the winning side. And the audience. Bill number 3885.
Bill number 3885, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an intergovernmental agreement for financial assistance, Grant 2012007, between St. Charles County and the St. Louis Jefferson Solid Waste Management District for receipt of funds in an amount up to $20,000.
Any questions or comments on Bill 3885? Hearing none, would you read the title and call the roll, please?
An ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an intergovernmental agreement for financial assistance, Grant 2012007, between St. Charles County and the St. Louis Jefferson Solid Waste Management District for receipt of funds in an amount up to $20,000. Councilmember Daugherty?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Cronin?
Yes.
Councilmember Brazel?
Yes.
Councilmember Matheny?
Yes.
Councilmember Hollander?
Yes.
Bill passes. Bill number 3886.
Bill number 3886, an ordinance fixing and establishing the rate and levying of taxes for the General Revenue Fund and for various special funds of and for the County of St. Charles, Missouri for the year 2012.
Any questions or comments on Bill 3886?
Madam Chair, can I ask Mr. Schnur to come up to the podium? I just want to revisit this one more time, Mr. Schnur, so the public will know how much they're paying for their real estate tax and the history of it going back to, let's go back 10 years. How many times have we decreased it? How many times has it stayed flat? And what is the average person paying?
You're talking about the general property tax,
yes,
correct? The general property tax, actually going back to County Executive Ortworth's administration, began to be zeroed out as our sales tax revenues were growing rather aggressively in the late 90s and the early 2000s. We got to a point where the property tax and I don't have the exact dates here, but about 4 years or so ago, the property tax was down to 21/100ths of a cent for every $100 of assessed valuation, and then we dropped it to 16/100ths of a cent, I think, for 2009 when we dropped it.
And what's that represent to the average homeowner? How much do they pay?
The average homeowner, I haven't done the calculations lately, but the average homeowner was paying about 62 or 63 cents a year for their general property tax on the average valued home in St. Charles County. So about a nickel a month, something in that range.
And my only other comment is, here we are, another year, and we're pinching pennies. We're not, we're not filling vacancies. We're not giving. We're not addressing the compression problem. Gas prices are going up. All the other utility prices are going up, and here we are not doing anything about it. This is a source of revenue that would not hardly hurt anybody if it was raised slightly, and it would help immensely the whole county. But we probably won't do anything about it again this year. So that's my comment.
Thank you.
Let me just reiterate something that has been said before, and that is that we are setting the tax rate for calendar year 2012, the year that we are in now. And the council can at any time change our tax rate. You don't have to wait until next September to do it. You know, it can be done at any time. And so you don't have to wait until September every year to deliberate on this. But we are setting the tax rate for this current year that's 3/4 of the way done at this point.
But once we set it, we can't go back and revisit it.
You can, I think you can.
This is set for the year that is over, that is nearly over.
Right.
When we get to budget time, we can address the 2013 rate.
Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Cronin?
If I'm reading these numbers right, and heavens forbid I'm not proposing it, but even if we doubled the property tax to the average homeowner, okay, we'd only raise $115,000, right?
Right. We are about as close to zero on our for general property tax as you can be.
Right.
We never wanted to zero it out because then it would have to go back to a vote of the people and all that. So we're down to effectively zero. We generate about $160,000 a year in general property tax.
I mean, even if we do raise it a substantial amount, it's not going to bring a whole lot of revenue in.
Right. We're at 0.16 of a cent, and our ceiling rate is somewhere like 7.9 cents or something like that. So it could go up a long way.
Yes, sir.
May I ask Bob a question?
Please.
Yeah, I just, we only got one question here and I'm getting confused. We have to set this by October 1st for this year.
2012.
And then for the next year, we can set it anytime after January 1st.
Right.
And then change it anytime up to next October 1st.
Correct. Right.
Okay.
Right.
That's what I thought.
Thank you for that clarification. So we can't do it during budget time.
No.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions, would you read the title and call the roll, please?
Bill number 3886, an ordinance fixing and establishing the rate and levying of taxes for the General Revenue Fund and for various special funds of and for the County of St. Charles, Missouri for the year 2012. Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Cronin?
Yes.
Councilmember Brazel?
Yes.
Councilmember Matheny?
Yes.
Councilmember Hollander?
Yes.
Councilmember Darty?
Yes.
Bill 3886 passes. That concludes bills for final passage. We have tabled bills. There are no bills on the table. Any announcements or miscellaneous?
I have one. I don't know if you saw the email today, but I guess Paul Wynn's had a bout of bad health, and I'd like to wish him, if he's listening tonight, a speedy recovery and get back home as soon as he can.